interviewing Tara Hunt, the author of the new book, The Woofie Factor, and a few questions for Tara after her presentation. You mentioned woofie. Tell us about woofie. What is woofie? Where do you get it? Where does it come from? And why is it important?
Well, the term itself was coined by fellow Canadian Cory Doctorow in a book called Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom. And it's, takes place in the future, and in the future there's no money. Instead there's this thing called woofie, which is actually implant. It's like I can ping your woofie, I get back a score. A high score means that you are trustworthy, that somebody that's done cool stuff, that I probably want to work with you. And it occurred to me that that's how we interact today in online communities. So if I friend you on Facebook and you can't quite remember if you've met me or maybe we haven't met, you'll ping my woofie. You can go check, do we have friends in common? What do I generally write about? You might Google me, that sort of thing. All those things are ways of pinging my woofie to figure out whether or not you want to follow back. So I was thinking about it from that perspective. Woofie really is the core sort of capital of our relationships in online community. Well, in general, in communities in general, online and offline. And we, those of us who are just casually interacting don't think about, we need to raise woofie. But I think a lot of companies and brands come on to these different networks, seeing the power and the volume that's on there, and they approach it in a traditional capitalist sense of the word without thinking about woofie or social capital. So the book is really about focusing on the raising of social capital or woofie rather than focusing on increasing numbers and making transactions and that sort of thing.
And if an organization or an individual wants to find out what their woofie is, how do they go about doing that? How do they measure it? What tools would they use to increase their woofie?
Well, there's all sorts of tools. I mean, you can go as basic as do a Google search, just a regular Google search. And it's not where your website lies as much as what are people saying about you, what's coming up to the top of the results. So
marketing managers or brand ambassadors within big companies that might have an older corporate culture about considering woofie, infusing woofie into their corporate culture, about how to get started and why they might need to.
Well, there are more and more case studies, and I think statistics and case studies are sort of languages that are understood by more traditional practitioners. So, if you can put together more and more, present case studies and statistics on companies that approach one way versus the other. So you can show, companies that come in, say maybe a Walmart that comes in, creates a Facebook page, puts up all these ads everywhere, push, disastrous. But a company, a company like Zappos, comparatively, comes into to the same space, doesn't have a. They might have a Facebook group, but that's not what they're driving. They just have a conversation with people. They help people. They answer people's questions. They interact on a really personal level. And guess what? Zappos is greeted with open arms. People are setting up fan pages, talking about them or blogging about them everywhere. So the two very different approaches, you can show the success of the raising woofie versus like the old-fashioned push marketing in this medium.
I noticed you talked about that actually in the presentation a lot, where it's not about let's put up the Facebook page and have a Twitter account and be on MySpace and all these different things. Like, what do you think is that fundamental difference between having a broad stroke across all of these networks and being kind of engaged in all these tools and doing the right thing? What is that key difference?
It's participating in the communities as a human being.